Hello folks, it is Thursday, you are nearly at the end of your week, congratulations to you. Firstly, if you like what I do, head on down to the subscribe button down below, and if you really like what I do, then click the notification bell or you will never hear from me again, because YouTube doesn't like to promote people when you don't press that button. Or if you're getting any models, or if my lore rewrite gives you any sort of inkling to get some new models, head over to Composite Games, because Games Workshop's prices are too expensive right at the moment. So, head on over there. Use the promo code Northern Exile down below to get yourself 5% checkout discount when you leave the store. Hooray! So, let's get on with it, shall we? Because today is a rather, I'm not going to say a large lore rewrite, but it is definitely one that is much needed. Because this week, we have been doing two factions that I would consider the punching bags of Warhammer 40,000. The Orcs, and now, of course, the Tyranids. I have a lovely mug of hot Yorkshire tea here. I can't bring my attention to it without taking a sip. So here we go. The lore of the Tyranids. This is something that I've been waiting to do for quite some time. So we are back to another of the punching bag factions. But this time, we have a lore that, whilst great, is saved by the writing of the fans rather than any effort on Games Workshop's part. The reason why I say that is because I've read some really amazing, grimdark, really horrific stories involving the Tyranids that are written by fans. Mainly because the fans will go places that Games Workshop will stoutly refuse to go. You can't have a more adult faction, a more horrific faction, a more nightmarish faction like Tyranids in your setting without getting involved in the nitty-gritty, in my opinion. That's what Games Workshops do. You know, they reduce everything down to a grey sludge that is more cartoony than it's worth. The fans, though, they treat Tyranids differently. I implore you to go online and look at fan fiction to do with the Tyranids. Well, some fan, there are some weird ones, but like any sort of horror fan fiction to do with the Tyranids will be a good place to start. I miss those innocent early days where I could say this to you and you wouldn't enter it into Google and come up with some really depraved nonsense that nobody's interested in, But unfortunately, that's not where we are these days. So I apologise if you come across the wrong thing, but there are some amazing things online that you really do need to take advantage of, and they are for free. So have a little look around if you want to know what the Tyranids are really like, because I assume these are the real face of the Tyranids rather than what Games Workshop show us over the past couple of years. I like the idea of the Tyranids as a galaxy-ending threat, and that is the level they should be at completely. Not a nuisance for the good guys to stop in their tracks whenever their mood kind of suits them, It's a real shame we have a faction here that could prove to be a setting definer in terms of grimdark and hopeless energy in front of a numberless, faceless horde. The sheer need for heroes and 40k, however, leads to things like the Tyranids and the Orcs being cannon fodder for those that need to look good facing something insurmountable. A shame, but we are here to change that eventually. I hope you get as much catharsis out of these videos as I do as well. The Tyranids really work as a numberless horde of beasts. Their absorption of genetic material to be repurposed into the Tyranid form is absolutely great in terms of threat level, and harkens back to their inspiration in terms of the xenomorphs from Alien. I say inspiration, more thieving, but we'll leave that grey area where it is. The creeping dread writing of some of their lore is also awesome. The shadow in the warp slowly choking off the calls for help of those about to be under attack by Tyranid fleets is a great metaphor, and shows that Games Workshop can actually treat the Tyranids with some respect and talented writing when they want to. The Gene Stealer cults are also an amazing idea for infiltrating larger and harder to break populations and actively calling down the Tyranid Hive fleet. Also that the mind-warped cultists can finally be absorbed into the whole that is the Tyranid Hive. And that is something that I've never really seen. I've recently played a game called Dead Space, the remake of it. And I will get into this later on, because I do take a lot of ideas from Dead Space when rewriting the Tyranids. But the actual calls are in that game of, we want to be whole again, please make us whole again, and having stuff like that go on is something that I thought would marry so well into the Tyranids. You know, can you imagine like something like that? Like everyone wants to become a part of the Tyranid whole, and that's what cultists are. And they spray it on walls and stuff. Let's become whole again. Things like that. It would be awesome. But of course, Games Workshop don't do that because that's a clever idea. They can't trust you with clever ideas, apparently. You know what I mean? It's got to all be, you know, mind sludge. Mind sludge. Complete mind sludge. The Hivemind is, as a concept, is also brutally brilliant. This unknowable, gargantuan presence that drives the Tyranids as an end times level threat. I love the Lovecraftian levels of power the Hivemind represents, and how its sheer size makes the reader feel really uneasy. It's a brilliant and predatory way of writing. Perfect organisms, crafted to absorb entire galaxies. Lovely, lovely stuff. That does not mean to say that the Tyranids get things their own way. In fact, their writing is, likely the biggest form of tonal whiplash in the entire setting. It's that bad. At least for me, guys, it's that bad. For all of their grievous threat to the galaxy, let's be completely honest here. They are stopped relatively easily compared to what the threat that they are, you know, purported to being. One Space Marine chapter in the Ultramarines, or a united bloodline in the Blood Angels, was enough to stop an entire Tyranid Hive fleet. When the entire Imperium could not stop the Beast in the War of the Beast, that doesn't exactly fill me with dread for the Tyranids despite their great build-up. You know? It really is a shame. The Tyranids are built up to be this galaxy-ending thing, and then, you know, the Ultramarines just kind of stop them. You know, shrug. They're just kind of like, over there, they you know, they lose an entire company. Oh, boo-hoo. Boo-hoo. The Ultramarines lose an entire company of Space Marines to the Tyranids. That was considered, you know, a fair trade in Games Workshop's eyes. An entire Hive fleet for one Space Marine chapter company. That was it. Now, that to me is tonal whiplash. That is complete tonal whiplash. That ruins them for me. That makes the Tyranids not that much of a threat at all, to be honest with you. It kind of makes them a bit of a joke. A bit of a joke. I'm sorry, but like... Okay, I'm going to hit you with an analogy right now. Okay? An analogy that you wrestling fans will love. Sue me, it's WrestleMania season. It's in my brain. I'm just going to do it. And you non-wrestling fans will need a Google image search to follow along, I guess. Imagine hearing about a wrestler with a 500-0 undefeated streak, with athleticism and mic skills that make him a once-in-a-generation star. You are expecting a Brock Lesnar guy with the mic skills of a Maxwell Jacob Friedman, right? What you get coming through the curtain for the match, however, is a slightly more beefed-up Gilberg. How would you feel? Shortchanged? Yeah, probably. That's the Tyranids in the lore at the moment. Massive build-up on the back end for a nothing payoff after all of that build-up. Disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful. And it's a wider symptom of what Games Workshop do to all of their things, all of their nice things going forwards. Nobody is allowed to win or lose in Warhammer apart from the Space Marines. Have you noticed that? And when the Space Marines face each other, neither of them are allowed to lose. Instead, they butt heads, they shake hands, and they walk away, respectfully. I've said this time and time and time again about Warhammer Heroes. It annoys me. Every time you see Abaddon and Dante cross swords or whatever, every time, or they will cross swords, when that happens, they will fight, both of them will nearly die, and then a big rock will fall from the sky in between them, forcing them apart, and then they're dragged apart by their warriors and they go on to fight another day. It's fucking lame. It's lame as shit. Nobody likes it. It's cheap writing. It just shows you that Games Workshop are afraid to hurt your feelings by actually letting one army take a loss every once in a while. It's bullshit. It doesn't make any sense. And the ones who are really at the bottom of the pile in terms of this phenomenon are, unfortunately, the Orcs, and to a much greater extent, the Tyranids. Because the Tyranids have a massive build-up. They are built up as this galaxy-ending threat that is about to bring the entire place to its knees. And what do? They turn up and get their shit pushed in by a single Space Marine chapter. Well, bully for you guys. Brilliant. Fantastic. And I don't give a shit whether the Ultramarines called in some help from their successor chapters. I don't give a shit whether the Blood Angels called in some help from their own successor chapters. The fact of the matter remains, a single bloodline, a single Space Marine bloodline, was enough to defeat an entire Tyranid Hive fleet. It's a joke. It shouldn't happen. It should be curtains for that Space Marine chapter. In fact, I think it's time. If I was writing the Shield of Baal, the Blood Angels would be gone. They wouldn't be here anymore. Right? We would have some sort of, shall we say, remnant force of Blood Angels, of heroes, right? But the Blood Angels Firstborn are gone. We would only be left with the Primaris, unfortunately. There would be certain pockets of Firstborn here and there, but there would be like 20 Marines left in every single company of the Blood Angels. That would be it. Because you cannot just keep giving the Space Marines wins at a detriment to these big forces that you built up over the years. By the way, in terms of models, give the Tyranids some love, for fuck's sake. This is getting beyond a joke. They are literally the ugliest models I've ever seen, and every single time you tell me how much of a big bad they are, I take one look at their models, I sigh and laugh on the inside. Okay? When I lose against Tyranids on the tabletop, I shouldn't feel embarrassed. I feel embarrassed not because of the rules, because their rules are really good. I feel embarrassed because I've got my shit pushed in by these models that look like little toys. The Alien toys from the early 90s are better looking than the Tyranid models that are out right now. That is not a thing that should be occurring at all. Give them some love. Rant over. Moving on. How would I change them? Okay? Stop ranting. I know. How would I change them? Well, firstly, I want to change one core thing about how the Tyranids act and feel. If we are going to be stealing from anything, it shouldn't be Alien. Or at least we'll steal a little bit from Alien. But if you want to steal Games Workshop, steal from Dead Space. I know. Controversial. And we're about to get more controversial. Because in my setting, this is what the Tyranids look like. Yeah. I wouldn't want to fight that. I would not want to fight that. That's not something I would want to fight. In fact, if that was on the tabletop, I'd be like, yeah, I'm staying away from that. I'm not going anywhere near that bloody thing. The Tyranids in my own setting, in the Exileverse, are a sentient disease. The Hivemind being a necromorphic god of cosmic horror that is determined to devour the entire universe and reanimate it into one glorious whole. I want to hint very heavily that the Hivemind, whilst predatory and kind of evil, actually sees its actions as benevolent. It seeks to end all war and conflict in the universe by devouring everything and making everything genetically the same, even if it is made of undead tissue. I want to kind of take most zombies away from Nurgle for the most part and give them to the Tyranids in other forms. The Tyranids retain their initial shape that we have in our current lore, but instead of looking more like xenomorphs, they are more flesh and bone coloured, and show more of their past selves in their makeup. So, human Tyranids resemble the necromorphs from Dead Space, but with legally distinct changes that we need to make, to make us not get sued, and things like that. The baseline of Tyranids still look like the original Tyranids, as we heavily hint that the Tyranids have swallowed numerous galaxies in the past, and this is what they consider to be the apex hunter forms to be. Scary stuff, huh? Alright, let's head a bit further deeper into what these new Tyranids are going to be like. The Tyranids first infect the world not through solid cults, but through the warp. They send dreams to those who may be susceptible to their calls. Slowly at first, these people begin shifting their metabolism through the warp, slowly but surely, until a new Tyranid being is formed, slaughtering those around them and infecting them with their genetic code, causing a cascade effect that, if it happens in a Hive city, will result in complete anarchy. Can you imagine one of these things being let loose in a Tyranid hive, you're infecting one person, and then that person immediately transforms into a new Tyranid form, and then they go on and kill another person and another person and another person in this massive cascading effect. And these Tyranids, by the way, they can't be killed. Like they can only be killed by submersion and like acid and stuff. You know, that's what you need to kill them. Sheer firepower won't bring them down unless you completely chop off all of their limbs and their head. You atomize them. That's the only thing that's going to stop them. That hive is done. And any army you send against them is done. When the Hive Fleet turns up, it does so just like it does in the modern lore. We keep the cosmic horror of the Shadow in the Warp, the Hivemind, and the calls of new cultists and lower Tyranid forms calling down the Hive Fleet. The world is consumed, much like it is in the current lore. Everything is broken down in massive biovats and turned into new Tyranid forms. All that is left is a completely barren rock, much like it is in the current setting. That's one thing of the current setting that I really want to keep. But what of the other worlds in the sector where this world was? Well, before long, the entire sector, across the entire sector, reports of Resident Evil-style sightings of the undead are creeping up. More importantly, cult activity and cannibal covens are being spotted and rooted out. More and more and more. Weird organic growths are seen forming from the walls, and they appear to be talking, whispering, taunting those nearby with visions of dead relatives, calling them to become whole with them again. Hysteria spreads, and into this maelstrom the Hive Fleet finally appears once again to begin their process that they call Ascension, quote-unquote. The Tyranids are a true galaxy-ending threat, and what's more, they are heading to terror. In our setting, if you've been reading along, in our setting, the Golden Throne being turned on alerted the Tyranids to the galaxy's existence, and like a massive animal, they are heading towards it to devour the greatest feast they have ever been presented with. The Emperor himself on the Golden Throne. I would only have the Tyranids eventually stopped in the Sol system and having to pass the Eye of Terror itself. And even then, it only forces a kind of stalemate. So the entire Imperium, right? Well, the Imperium in this part of the galaxy unites to stop the Tyranids. All space in the corridor between Terra and the Eye of Terror is a constant war zone of undead nightmares that even the Chaos Gods cannot hope to turn back. Incredibly, the Tyranids are adapting to the Eye of Terror, slowly eating up territory regardless of how time and reality acts within the warp. The Great Rift occurs at this time, and we hear that the Black Legion and Abaddon destroyed Cadia not because they thought that they could, but out of sheer desperation. Their choice was assimilation into the Hive Fleets or breaking out, causing the Great Rift, as a way for their brothers to escape their prison and the impending doom that the new Hive Fleets represent. From here, the Tyranids are halted, and so they send their Hive Fleets out into the galaxy to begin the slow harvest of all life. Only these smaller Hive Fleets can be turned back, but with immense cost. So, we have the Shield of Baal campaign and the Tyranid Wars still happening, but the Tyranid Wars, for instance, occur at the first advance parties of Tyranids when they show up in the galaxy before the main bulk of the Greater Hive Fleet turns up. So, in our lore, the Tyranid Wars happen first. As, you know, people come into the galaxy, the Tyranids start coming into the galaxy. Then the main bulk turns up at the start of, to force the Great Rift to happen. So, like, the 13th Black Crusade happens at the same time. The galaxy kind of ends, let's be honest, when the Great Rift occurs. And we have the modern 40k lore. And then the Shield of Baal campaign happens when the first Hive Fleet splinter off from the main group and start devouring the galaxy in earnest. And that kind of annihilates the Blood Angels in the Shield of Baal campaign, right? Alrighty. So, and the Shield of Baal campaign happens just as it does in our other video about the Blood Angels. So, like a burst bubo on a body, the Tyranids were pierced against the Sol system and then burst across the galaxy, attempting to consume everything at the same time, instead of focusing their energies and forces on a single foe. This is the only thing keeping the galaxy from absolute annihilation. Whenever the Tyranids group their hive fleets together, the Hivemind begins to grow in intelligence once again, turning the beasts towards terror. So the Imperium actively hunts smaller hive fleets with forces like the White Scars and the Iron Drakes. Aha! See how the lore is now linking together? To desperately keep them from melding together like they did in their first push. So there we are. There we have it. A true threat that actually wins, but maintains the balance of power in 40k. What do you think? Have I gone far enough, or have I gone too far? There are some people who, I've read this out to some people in the Discord and on my Patreon. Some of them think I've gone a bit too far with this. Some of them think it's not far enough. What do you guys think? I like the way that it's linking in now. Like the entire Exileverse is starting to link in together. We're starting to see all the threads pop together. With frayed edges, of course, because I did the Blood Angels video ages ago, so there may be certain things that don't line up quite right. But it would take like 10 minutes of fraying down those edges for it all to fit together quite nicely, in my opinion. So, what do you guys think? Have I gone too far? Have I gone far enough? I don't know. Let me know. I will see you tomorrow for some more Hobby Nightmares, and we have some absolute doozies tomorrow that should be really, really, really entertaining. So, love you all a long time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll speak to you soon. Have a good one.